limited. So this is a great opportunity to get back into that, and yeah, thank you for coming. I don't know, my passion for flying started at a very young age, and I think one of the things that drives it, keeps driving it even today, is a curiosity that exists amongst most people towards aviation, towards things that fly, towards these ideas of dreaming big and looking far, and I don't know, some people associated with power and all interesting ideas. And it could be that even contributes to the curiosity around the fact that there's a from Jewish boy who's involved in it. And it's something that always, I don't know, captured my imagination, how it could be that there's these strong forces in the world that captivate our imaginations and consume us. I know from a small child, and it carries on through this day as a big child, a lot of my attention is drawn in that space. And the passions are there, and the curiosity to learn and to develop and to always be better and striving to constantly grow in this imaginary world. It looks imaginary, but when you make it reality, it becomes so much more tangible and so exciting. And how that integrates with our Yiddishkeit. We know that Hashem is everything, and He created us with a purpose. We get put in this world with a purpose, and there's all these things around us, and we always taught that nothing's for nothing. Hashem doesn't create anything without a reason. So how to integrate these strengths, skills, passions, all these things into our Yiddishkeit. An interesting thing happened to me when, obviously in South Africa, as far as I know, I was the only from commercial pilot or religious airline pilot that was, I don't know, in aviation circles there. But when we started the process of making Aliyah and coming to Israel, I thought, okay, there's still a uniqueness here, but let's see where it goes. I imagine that there's some religious Air Force pilots or guys in the airlines. And in part of the testing process, which is really long, and I had to change my whole license over and do all the exams again, a lot of it in Hebrew. One of the things I had to do was an exam for using the radio in Israel. And as you can imagine, coming as an Oleh Chadash to all of a sudden speaking this lingo that had become second nature, but anyone who listens into aviation speak on the radio knows it's a different language. And all of a sudden to have to make a shift and learn this new language, but now in Hebrew as well, and sit in front of a guy to be tested can be a bit challenging and intimidating. And the day for my radio exam came, I went to the center, which is actually pretty close to where we live in Ramat HaSharon, and I go into the testing hall, and I see the religious man sitting down. I thought, okay, maybe he's one of the administrators or something. And they call me over and they say, there's your examiner, go sit with him. And he looks at me and he looks at my kippah and he says, you here for the radio exam? I said, yes. He says, okay, he's the examiner. He says, nice to see there's another Jewish person or from person. And he says to me, do I know that he is the only religious rabbi captain in the world? I looked at him and I smiled and I thought to myself, is it? And I said to him, really, I want you to know something. I've got smicha, I just came out of 10 years in Kollel. He was so excited, we immediately formed a bond. This was before the test. By the way, I learned very quickly in Israel, that's the way to get through tests. Establish the bond, make connections. When you've got connections like that, and protect who needs friends, or who needs help or assistance from above or anything. So immediately I saw, this was even before we'd moved here, that there was a space and there was an opportunity to have this from expression in Israel, in this profession that I really love. I thought it would be a nice launching platform even to start this evening's ideas on. The topic of spirituality and physicality, of these two worlds, often, I don't know, I experienced in my upbringing that a lot of our education was focused in two channels, and they didn't often meet. There was, okay, we're going to start your day off with Limudei Kodesh. You'll come to school early. Those who wanted could learn before davening, then you daven, and then you have Kodesh, and the Rabbonim tell you this is the real world. This is the Olam HaAmiti. This is what it's all about. and even to the extent that everything else is nothing, and this is what we focus on. And if you can do this for the rest of your life, just to stay in this space of learning, that's it. That's the A ticket. That's for the A grade people. And then later on in the day comes 12 o'clock, 11 o'clock, depending on the school, sometimes 1 o'clock or even 4 or 5 o'clock, depending how extreme it went. All right, not everybody can do that. We tried the pills, we tried the canes, we tried the detentions, we've tried everything. It's not for everyone. There's this other world out there. Those are the guys that will support us. They'll go and work. They can't concentrate in this place, but they'll go and concentrate somewhere else and use their energies to come and support this A world, so to speak. And it left a feeling, retroactively now, thinking back to those school days, that there was, as that saying in Hebrew, there's just Sug Aleph and Sug Bet. You don't have A grade's not for everybody. But I think later on, starting to see both of these, so to speak, worlds that looked separate starting to merge, and how you can blend one with the other, and hopefully we're going to get to this, see that it's actually one world in the end. There's not two separate worlds here, and how we can use everything that's at our disposal, all our tools, to achieve our maximum in terms of potential. I was very, very fortunate to have 10 years pretty much from when we got married. For the first 10 years, I got a position in a kollel and in a school in South Africa, in Johannesburg, at the Yeshiva Maharsha. One of the biggest gifts I could ever imagine. It came about not on purpose, like most good things. You aim in one direction, and Hashem says, is it? Nice plan. Come a bit this way, come a bit that way. There's this concept of Rabot Machshavot Belevish. A man's got many schemes. Hashem's ultimate plan for you and your destiny, He'll guide it. As long as you're facing more or less the right path, you'll be directed along the right stream. And living in that world of kollel, teaching, was almost entirely focused in that what I as an immature outlook would call the spiritual world only, and the real world, and that was the whole existence. Fortunately, I had strong encouragement from my parents to always keep my flying current, to keep the license valid. It requires a lot of input. You need to fly a certain amount of takeoffs and landings every 90 days, and there's rules every month and night and day and instruments. It's a whole story, which afforded me the opportunity to simultaneously live in that world of learning a full morning, and then in the afternoon, and a bit in the evening, and then still being able to fly some days in my lunch breaks or on the weekends, on Sundays, and to keep them, running in parallel. More focus, obviously, on the full-time Torah aspect, but it was there to support. And very quickly, in my very early teaching days, I saw this fascination that the kids had with the flying side. Obviously, it was a young boys' primary school. The second they hear that they're getting a Rabbi who's actually a pilot as well, often they don't hear the Rabbi part. The Rabbi is this character that sits in front of the class, he keeps them there and makes sure that they're following a certain syllabus. But this idea in the kids' mind, and you could see it in their eyes, I always imagined myself sitting there. This is the coolest thing. You got a pilot sitting in front of you. And I saw so quick that you can use that aspect of their full attention focused on one thing, and you can hold their attention with that. And instead of using pills and all these other fancy tricks, just use that tool. I imagined it like this in my mind, to grip their minds with it, lift it up a little bit, and then you can put in everything else. And they focused on you, they become like sponges, and it's coming from a source that's fun, it's entertaining, it's exciting. Kids love imagination. That's the imaginary world. They're having this figure in front of them that lives in that imaginary space. It was a very powerful teaching tool. And it clicked for me then. Hang on, this flying didn't come for nothing. While I was in that space, and almost till the last 6 months, I remember my father asking me, Kev, what's your plans? Where are you going with this? How are you going to support your family as a primary school Rebbe, as an Avrech in Kollel? Everyone knows that's not where you make money. Money's, you get everything there, your whole life's taken care of, but money is one of those things you just get by with from month to month. So what's the plan? And I thought I'd carry on until age 90. I never wanted to stop. There was such a fulfillment in it. I was growing so much from it. And obviously that, maybe when that point was reached where I was satiated from the amount of giving and the amount of teaching, Hashem says, okay, you've got that understanding. This is how I'm understanding it. You've also got this other skill set. Now it's time to move into a different space. And He guided us wherever we've landed up. And it's a journey that's ongoing. But here we are tonight with, thank you to Mike, who put up the title there, that this pilot concept is there, and I think it does its thing, it still attracts attention, and it gives me the opportunity to hopefully show in real time. I've got an amazing example even from today, how to integrate both the worlds. To now move into a bit of a question space on why it is that we have all these things around us. Why is this world so full of things, and how do we use these tools that are around us to grow? And why is it like that? I remember listening to a shiur from Rabbi Leuchter. By the way, it was on the way to an airfield one Sunday afternoon. I remember I used to do it every time. On my way there was half an hour, and on the way back, I'd listen to his shiurim. And I'd try and take from the shiurim and from the flight that Sunday and bring it into my class on the Monday morning for news. I remember when I was in school also, Mondays was news day. If we were good, you could tell a bit of news. And it was a time where the teachers were like, oh boy, yeah, we've got 20 kids, we've got to hear news. They need to express themselves, 1 minute per kid, let's get this done. I had news as well in my class, but it was mainly for me. This was my chance to shine. It was, I gave the kids their space. They obviously got involved, and I used to invite them to get involved in my stories as well. But I'd take from the flying stories and show how it connects to different things in the parasha, and you just start seeing with open eyes and living through the parasha, through the Torah, that all these things start integrating, and very quickly it becomes that one world of physical, spiritual, blended with lessons coming out. So the shiur from Rabbi Leuchter described this concept of these two spaces, and he said that many people come with the idea, especially now we're approaching Elul, when we want to do Teshuvah, that it's a time to disconnect from the physical space, disconnect from all the pleasures in Israel and the northern hemispheres with the summer. This is the time, all right, we after summer now. You've had your 2 or 3 week splurge, and you've engaged with the beach and the mountains and who knows what else. And now's the time to settle down into Elul and really go for it hard and learn full power and disconnect from all that stuff. In that space, where's the physical? Where's using the physical for something good? It's that disconnecting idea, which is not ideal. What we're supposed to do, this whole concept of Teshuvah, is to do Teshuvah, return every single one of the elements we're involved in, whether it be our mental space, whether it be our physical space, and obviously in our workspace and our family space with our shalom bayis and with our children and the chinuch and all of these things, to grow through all of those things. And this was his main point, that the world was designed for us to grow through. In fact, it's the only way to grow. A human being can't grow in this world if they're disconnected from all the physical things. An amazing proof to it, look through all the mitzvahs pretty much in our Torah. Look through the calendar. We can start whatever, the biblical Rosh Chodesh of Nisan. In the month of Nisan we have Pesach, where we have matzah. It's an intense eating episode or experience with a lot of crunchiness and a lot of difficulty sometimes, but there's the wine as well. And we grow through those mitzvahs. We make special brachas on the foods and through the experiences. If we jump to Sukkot, which is around the corner, you take physical things, the lulav and esrog, all the arba minim. There was the water korbanos in the Beis Hamikdash. With Shavuos, that wasn't so long ago, with the Bikurim. We're very involved in the world. Building a sukkah is also the way you grow, and a lot of the mitzvahs that we do are through the physical world. If someone doesn't have access to those things, someone who's not alive in this world, that's this whole concept of petira, when La'aleinu, when someone leaves the world, that this word patira is from patur. They now patur from mitzvahs. What's this whole big idea that they patur? They lose that opportunity to grow. I can't claim to understand these ideas, but we can touch on them. That they say in the world of malachim, a malach is an omed, someone who stands. There's one job normally dedicated to a malach in that spiritual space. It's the world of omdim. They given a duty where they're stationary, they stand. But in this world, we're active and we move around. It's the world of holchim, people who walk around. We're involved. We have to be involved. We have to use this physical space in order to grow. So for me, there was a powerful chiddush that the only way to grow, it's not that it's an option or sugbet or, not ideal, but okay, it's there. The only way to grow is through the physical world. And that switched the lights on for me. I was like, wow, okay, this is powerful. Now you start looking at your workspace in a totally different light. You have to be there. Hashem built the world, even though Parnasa came to Adam as a curse, it's there now. We have to be mefanes our families. We need to earn a living. That whole workspace is an opportunity to grow and to be Mekadesh Shem Shamayim, to sanctify God's name in the world. How we behave, people look at us. If we're wearing a kippah, they associate you with a certain higher standard. I don't know, we see it quite often that the more religious looking, let's call it, or extreme looking, whatever you want to say it is, especially the Charedim, are held to a very high standard of accountability purely because of how they dress. They're like, you want to be so unique in your dress? Well, we expect you to be so unique in your behavior as well. It comes with a responsibility. Responsibility in this world is a healthy thing. It can motivate us and it can spur us on. Something that's nice, I'll also touch on that maybe a bit later in another story. So this idea of engaging the world, having it as the only way to actually grow, has become a focal point in our home, and I don't know, hopefully it should be all over the place. And we should be looking for these opportunities and stories in our own space that we can share around the table. Everyone's a teacher. Whether we like it or not, we teach our spouses, our children, people around us, and we can use stories and things like that to get these messages across. Part of, the amazing experiences I have now, especially flying in Israel, was always one of my big dreams, is I get to fly over sometimes a lot of the holy places and get to see some amazing views that most people don't normally get to see, at least not often. And today I had an amazing experience. It really touched me. One of our senior pilots at work, I was flying with him today, often asks me, especially if we fly together on a Thursday or a Friday, for a short vort on the parasha. Outwardly, he's not religious at all, but who knows, inwardly he's a yid. There's a spark there, and sometimes it's a raging bonfire. It's not even a spark, but it can be sometimes, especially if one's grown up in a secular environment, that there's this urge to cover that spark or that fire up. But when he's in a safe space, seemingly safe, up at 35,000 feet, moving along at nearly 1,000 k's an hour, he feels safe. So, or maybe there's just a shared danger, I don't know. But he asks, and we talk every now and then about the Pasha. He's very well versed in Tanakh. I think he grew up more in a kibbutz environment where they did learn Tanakh, and he can quote, I think, almost all of Pirkei Avot Baal Peh. He's integrated a lot of those ideas into his life, and you see he lives these concepts. There's this idea of a yid being totally disconnected is very foreign to us, especially, South Africans. I'm sure most Anglos don't have this segregation of all these different boxes. A Jew's a Jew, doesn't matter where you are on the spectrum and where you are in your different phases of growth. That's all fun. You're on a path. But here, it's more, maybe it used to be more black and white or multispectral, but there's a lot of different boxes along the way. Anyway, we were chatting today, and today was my chance to say to him, hey, have you got something to tell me on the Parsha that connects with what we're doing right now? And he looks at me and is like, hang on, you flipped the tables here, what's going on? Why are you asking me these questions? I said, hang on, but I've got something good. It's an interesting one. He says, okay, let's think. He says, what's the parasha? It's by Hanan. It's like, that's quite right. He says, what's the story? Who was being mitchanen, who was begging for a gift? It was Moshe Rabbeinu, and he thinks. He says, yes, okay, what was this gift what did Moshe request from Hashem? And he's thinking. And he's like, give him a minute. I said, we don't have that much time for you to think about it for it to be relevant. So try Aria. The flight today that we did was pretty unique for me. We normally do, if we're doing the domestic route, it's from Tel Aviv. We fly over Jerusalem normally, towards the top of the Dead Sea, the northern part of the Dead Sea, then down the Arava Valley, and to Eilat. Stunning views, we get to see Jerusalem. Sometimes we get a shortcut, we fly almost over Hebron. You see the whole Midbar Yehuda. Some days, like even today, we could see Har Gerizim and Har Eval, near Shechem. Beautiful sights. But we normally climb up to around 20,000 feet, let's say, 7 kilometers above the ground, which gives a good view. From the northern parts of the Dead Sea, already even lower than that, you can see the Hermon. All the way from there, it's 180 kilometers away. From the higher levels, we can see Eilat. Got a good view. Today, we flew from Eilat all the way to Larnaca, which is in Cyprus, which was about an hour's flight, which gave us an opportunity to climb a lot higher. And we passed over Jerusalem already at 36,000 feet, about 12 kilometers up. From there, I can't even describe the view. It's amazing. I took pictures. Anyone who wants to see afterwards, you're welcome. We could see the whole of Israel and beyond. You can actually see 5 capitals of the world from over Jerusalem from that height. There's Cairo, we could see it quite clearly. There's Damascus, there's Amman in Jordan, there's Jerusalem, and another one in Beirut in Lebanon. So you can imagine this bird's eye view. But most birds don't get up there. Apparently there's been a vulture or two that's been spotted that high, but normally not. So I said to him, no, what can we see? Here's the biggest clue I can give you. Look outside. He's like, okay, he was a fighter pilot. This view is not foreign to him. He's been that high over some of our neighbors as well. He's been around. But I was like, what can you see? What of significance is there? And he's like, okay, I can see all the way to the north, far, 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 and down to the south, and off to the east and the west. He can see everything. He can see the whole of Israel and biblical Israel. So that's exactly it. That's the connection. I was like amazed. This week's parasha, my first time being that high over Jerusalem, right in this parasha. What did Moshe Rabbeinu want? He wished even he couldn't set foot in Israel. But Hashem offered to show him the whole land. It says in the pasuk, even the wording. See, there you go. Hashem's right here. You open up, boom, on the page. Doesn't always happen, but it's a nice trick. Hashem says, "Alei Rosh HaPisgah, go up onto this peak. V'sa einecha yama, cast your eyes towards the sea. That's towards the west. Tzafona, up towards the north. V'teimana, which is the south. The airport in Eilat is actually, it was known as Sted Teiman. So down to Teimana, you see the Torah, it's alive. Even today, it's so real. Umizracha, and also out towards the east. And here we had this opportunity to see something that maybe 100 years or not even, who's been up to 36,000 feet even in the last 50 years. That until recently, couldn't even be imagined. How you could see the whole of the land of Israel with just by moving your head around was an amazing gift. And that's a small example of living through the parasha, living connected. Everything's connected. And for me, I don't know, that struck a nice chord. It was something powerful. Another example, one of my favorite stories that I learned so much from about myself. We're moving now from vast views and expanses and conceptual things about the world, and that we need to grow through the world and take everything that's at our fingertips and grow through it into an extremely personal space inside me. So it's a big zoom in. Sorry, the focus is on me, but there's a purpose. It's a lesson I think that everyone can learn from. And I learned it was almost simultaneously in 2 very personal spaces about the same kind of skill and intensity being applied initially in 2 different spaces, but ultimately merging into one. It's this whole concept again of one world, one existence, which always ties into Shema. We go back to these things. Hashem describes Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. It's all one in the end. Also, wasn't something I got into on purpose, but was there a bit as an intermediary, a bit of an agent for the sale of an aerobatic aeroplane. So aerobatics has two different streams. There's airshow aerobatics, which aerobatics is, people call it stunts or tricks and things like that. That's to draw attention, to draw crowds. That happens low down to the ground in front of big crowds. In my mind, a very dangerous space. I never want to be in an aeroplane that has just done something where someone on the ground goes, wow, that's cool. In my mind, that's danger. You don't want to be motivated by other people's excitement. Another kind of aerobatic flying, it's a bit foreign to most people though, is a very scientific, exact, with a bit of artistry involved kind of aerobatics with very precise maneuvering. It requires incredible concentration, a lot of practice, a lot of energy invested in order to achieve these levels of accuracy. And you get judged by a panel of judges, so there is pressure from the outside, but it's done at a very safe altitude with people around you with years of experience. And these people are so highly trained, the second they see an approach to something that's marginally dangerous, on the radio they'll wave you off, and they even have flags on the ground if the radio fails to wave you off and to cancel the rest of your sequences in the name of safety. There's also all safety equipment that goes into it. Bottom line, it's not as dangerous as it sounds. Let's say, I'm trying to make it sound not as bad, but anyway, I got involved in this space. A very close friend of mine who's a mentor, also a teacher, also a chavrusa, had an aeroplane that he was wanting to sell and upgrade. He was very involved in the space of aerobatics, and I brokered the deal. And part of the deal for the new person who was buying this plane, was also a very close friend of mine, was that I would be trained on it as an instructor, and part of that training required us to do at least one competition. So be trained up to a satisfactory level to enter a competition and be judged, and only then was he willing to sell the plane. He's a person who takes responsibility and ownership for things that he does. That in itself was a lesson. So we went through this whole process. And a lot of hard training, many weekends just focused on it. It's super intense. Normal flying, you spend an hour or 2 or 5 or 10 in one direction, managing all these systems. If everything's going well, it's fairly relaxed. Your biggest concern is battling the fatigue. God forbid, if things go wrong, that's where you earn your salary, and that's a different space. But even those, they don't last long, please God. This world or this space of the aerobatics is super intense. A long flight is 20 minutes. The standard one might be 10. 2 of those minutes are spent climbing up just to get to a safe space, another 6 doing your business, and another 2 coming into land. But it requires maximum effort. After those 10 to 20 minutes, no more energy. You need to lie down often, or you need to take a break for an hour or 2 just to recuperate, to restabilize, let your mind's gyroscopes restabilize, and also internalize or absorb what you've just done. So a lot of these training flights later, we go to the competition, and we had a series of maneuvers that we needed to do. For the little boys amongst us, or even if there's little girls who like flying too, I'll describe these maneuvers. For me, it still captures a bit of the essence and excitement. The first maneuver is called a spin. Not nearly as scary as it sounds, but the aircraft has to fly within a box that the judges demarcate, 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer, and it's 1 kilometer high. The aircraft has to enter this space. You're not allowed to leave the parameters of the box. If you leave, you get a 0 for that maneuver. You can come back in and carry on, but you're out the game if that happens. So you have to be super precise just with your position. Then they watch that your lines are perfectly straight. Some of them have transparencies with lines on them that they can measure exactly how many degrees off you are. And if you're off by 5 degrees, which is it's a minuscule amount to the layperson looking, you've lost 10% already. So you have to be super accurate. You fly across level, slowing down, so your engine's basically at idle. And you stall the wing of the plane, not the engine, which basically means the wing loses a large amount of its lift. The plane, then you introduce a rotational aspect, so the plane starts to spin around like this, and you need to stop after exactly 1.5 turns. And again, your stop is measured also within the degree. So if you don't stop exactly on your heading now, facing straight down, you get penalized. So you're measured on the straightness of your down line and of your heading. That's the first maneuver, so it's 1.5 turns, you're facing straight down. And you check the maneuver, and after each maneuver you need to draw these imaginary lines in the air so that the top of maneuver is spaced equally to the bottom part, and your acceleration everything's measured. Then you pull out, and then you do a bit of a straight line, and they want to see that now you've positioned yourself from being at about 90 kilometers an hour when you start the story at the edge of the box. You now gone straight down. As you can imagine, things pick up pretty quickly and get exciting. You pull out with G-force now. I don't know if any of you have seen these videos of people under G-force. Basically, someone who weighs 100 kilograms in a pull-out that's fairly mild will now weigh 400 kilograms. Not so bad for the lower part of your body, it's sitting on a chair. But a head that normally weighs around, 15 kilograms, for that to weigh 60 kilograms, it's a bit of a heavy thing to manage. You need to keep it straight, you need to stay concentrated. Something that's also working against you is this whole thing of gravity. The blood in your body also starts to weigh 4 times more than it did, and that drains from your mind. And anyone who knows anything about medicine or life even will know that you need blood in your mind in order for the body to work. So you need to battle this as well. You squeeze your muscles and you squeeze your legs, and sometimes people scream. I'm sorry I'm getting so graphic about it, but it's part of the fun. And if you can imagine how to make your face go red, shouting or whatever it is, that's how you keep the blood there. So while you're trying to be so super accurate, you need to fight off gravity's attempt to knock you out. And you pull out, and you've got to draw a straight line, and from going, like I said, at about 90 kilometers an hour, maybe 100, you're now doing about 320. And you're going to go across this box in about 12 seconds if you're not quick. And they want to see that you space this loop perfectly in the middle. And it starts again, another pull. And then you get to relax over the top. It's one of the most beautiful feelings after all of this. As you get to the top, you're weightless. And all of a sudden, there's this floaty feeling. In the beginning, the first couple times, maybe people don't enjoy it. Now it's like, wow, it's a bit of a taste of heaven. It's special. And you see the world moving around and all these things changing. And it's, to those who enjoy it, there's a certain excitement to it. But back to the game, you've got to focus and make the top of the loop around. You can't just enjoy it. And you've got to keep straight, and the propeller's trying to turn you, and a lot of dynamics. And you come back around and make sure the bottom of it's straight, and you want to be exactly where you started the loop. And you're back at 320 kilometers an hour in the middle, and you've only got 6 seconds left before you're out the box. And within 2 seconds, you need to start the next maneuver. And up you go again, and this time it's straight up. And they're watching your line, and you're looking outside, and you're trying to make sure you position, and you get to the top, and this time the plane stops completely. Facing up, and that's it. The silence pretty much, and you wait, and you've got to pivot it around, and they're watching that your pivot is perfect. And now there's a heavy engine in the front that wants to go past, and you have to stop it, and it's a whole science. And you come back around, and then there's a roll and a turn and a few more maneuvers, but your focus is so intense. Every second of this, 4 minutes that goes by, when you're finished, it's an amazing release. But if you've managed to stay so focused the whole way through, I noticed, that every other thought that could possibly be was squeezed out of your mind. There's nothing left. There's just this thing that you're focused on and nothing else. There's the precision, there's the accuracy, there's your performance, and that's it. And all of a sudden you're out of that space, and you start appreciating what a unique experience it is to get a taste of absolute focus, and then it starts sinking in. Hang on, you're a human being. On top of that, for us, you're a yid, you're here with a purpose. You've just been through this amazing experience, and you've seen, whoa, there's this Jewish guilt that comes along straight away. Hang on, I'm capable of so much more than I thought. I sit in the base medrash and these thoughts pop in my mind sometimes while I'm trying to learn Gemara, and the thought is what pushes everything else out. And you sit there daydreaming. Sometimes if you're on your own, you can have a wonderful trip down to the beach, on a flight, who knows where, each person on their own. I don't know if it's clothes shopping or shaitel shopping or whatever it is, and you can push everything else out and have that unique focus experience. But the focus on us should be, what do we choose to do with this mental space? What do we choose to put all our focus on, and how are we going to use that to grow? In parallel, I was busy with my smicha learning at the kollel, and I was very fortunate to have a Rav Finkelstein, he should be well, who also encouraged us, just by his presence and his knowledge, to give absolute 100% focus to the learning that was going on. His knowledge was so vast. His mind is unique in the sense that, in my eyes, that it seems like most of the stuff he learns, he just knows automatically. It's there, off by heart. He's got access to it on his fingertips. I'm not taking away one iota from his skill and the amount of effort he puts in to keep it like that. I have no doubt, in order to stay that sharp, you need to invest, but he does. And that's the difference. So sitting in front of someone like that, when they're starting to interrogate and to ask questions and to encourage you to learn better as one of their Talmidim, makes you super focused. And I remember in one of the final fahirs, it's like one of the final tests in our process, sitting in front of him at the front of the shul, there was a bit of a stage in the shul where we were learning, and it was just the two of us. And I could feel he knew exactly what to ask, where to ask, where there was a bit of in my mind, it felt good, it felt clear, and I thought I knew the answers, but he sensed within me that there was an area that needed a bit of sharpening, a bit of polish. How we knew that? It's an amazing teacher who's able to identify that within their students, what they need to grow, what they need to develop and to self-actualize. And he was asking, and I could feel he was like taking me along this journey, and straight away there's these feelings of this intense focus took me straight back to the aerobatics, made me think, hang on, you've been in this space before. This is exactly why you went through that. It's to show you it's in you. You've got it. You can do it. Don't be scared of it. It's a healthy space. It's an exciting space. It's an opportunity for growth. There I sat in front of him, and it was getting more intense. And I even started to feel stuff that I've never felt in an aeroplane, which some people associate with flying. There's a bit of vertigo. You're like sitting on this chair, exposed. Your mind is completely exposed. Someone's digging in the deepest, darkest spaces that it has there, and you're starting to feel a bit wonky on your seat. Never had that in a plane, but here I was sitting in front of my Rav, being taken to that point, even beyond where I was in the aerobatics. So for me it was a powerful thing. It was also a bit of a light bulb moment to see how these things connect, how these skills that we can take from what we think is just the physical world, but it's all the same. It's the same skills that we can use, just apply them for a higher purpose. That was a powerful moment for me. It's been, we're at 9 o'clock. I'm having a blast. I hope everyone's okay. You can carry on maybe a little bit more if it's okay. Just back to where the story with this guy I was flying with today, with Moshe Rabbeinu, looking into Eretz Yisrael. One of the things that crossed my mind, and we spoke about it, was this pining that Moshe Rabbeinu had to enter Eretz Yisrael. There's a lot of the mitzvahs that one can only fulfill living in this space, crossing that border. And it again touches on this whole idea of using the physical in order to grow. That was denied. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't have access to all of that. And if we can just think of it on a very broad national space, national territorial space, with the dividing up of the land, last week's parasha, and where the different tribes were going to live all over Israel. Each section of the land had its strengths. So there's areas, actually I see it from the air quite often, there's areas that are amazing for olive farming. And the Arabs have, they know this quite well. An olive tree to them is very sacred. There's areas that are better for grapes and the vineyards, and there's a lot of vineyards here. There's maybe not, the fishing's not so strong here today. It was another one of Barbie's that we had to give up when we moved here. But there used to be, apparently there was, maybe it's a bit further out nowadays, but the tribes that lived along the coast had access to the fishing. And there were tribes that had access to the things that are in the mountains and the grain farming and whatever else, and down in the desert for the sheep farming. And Reuven, Gad, and half of Menashe, Dafka wanted to live on that side because there was good grazing for their flocks. Moshe Rabbeinu saw all of that all of those things, accessing the land, accessing these things that could be perceived as mundane, he saw the spiritual potential for growth in them. And we should be cognizant of that each one of these things has its place, and we need to use all of them. And it touches again back to the calendar of the korbanot in the Beit HaMikdash, and with the wine, where every Friday night, every Havdalah, every marriage, every bris, we make a bracha on wine. It's also, that's one of the big ideas of taking from the physical, doing something to it, making it from grapes or grape juice into a wine. It gets its own special bracha. We've elevated it to the point where we can make a kiddush, something kadosh on it, lift it up in spirituality. So Moshe Rabbeinu saw in the land of Eretz Yisrael all of these things that he so desperately wanted to experience, to grow through, to elevate himself even higher, that got denied. But everyone who's here, I think most of the people here have made Aliyah, if not everyone, has been blessed with that opportunity, not to compare ourselves to Moshe Rabbeinu, but to be aware, we his ancestors, that we've been given this tremendous gift to be able to move here, to cross over those boundaries, however it may be. Probably most of you on an aeroplane, which it all ties in. And we're here, we get to live here, we get to experience all of these things, and we need to be aware of them. Something else I spoke about with our family this week, I don't know why, I don't know, it was probably one of our first since we moved here, but sometimes there's winds of a bit of unsettledness that come into one's space. And those also need to be seen for what they are. They're often just a challenge to realign maybe something that's slightly out of place, or an emunah challenge that just needs to refocus one, where you see people in the news are speaking about the yokar HaMechiyah, the high cost of living that is here now. Tel Aviv was rated as the most expensive city in the world. And was it just last week when our neighbors were shooting fireworks again, and it made a bit of unpleasantness for us? There's those elements as well. There's an Israeli, I don't know, it's a trend, or even, Mars, it's a bit of a phenomenon, that there's this exodus, especially in the Kietz HaGadol, in these summer months, where literally millions leave the country. I'm very grateful for it, it gives me work. But they flee out of here and go, whether it's even for 3 or 4 nights. I know the company I work for sells these holiday packages. And for 3 or 4 nights, as a foreigner, especially coming from South Africa, who goes on holiday for 3 or 4 nights? You're just warming up after 3 days. A week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 6 weeks, get into it a little bit, have a holiday. These people are gone for 3 or 4 nights. They spend their years, not even their savings, the bank savings from the year, and they go into Minos, and it's another Israeli custom, and they put it all into this 3 or 4 days experience. And all these people leaving, and they speak about, wow, the space that's in Chutz La'aretz, that not everybody lives in a 20-story building with 4 or 5 or 6 apartments per floor and has to sit in traffic for an hour on their way to work. A few weeks ago, I was in Amsterdam, in an area just out of town. Everybody's got a plot of land and a massive house and a horse that can go running, and you don't see it for 2 days, and you're not worried. There's just space and water, and it's green, and it's seemingly easy. There's a reason we're here. These things can throw us and sometimes make us question, what are we doing here? Hang on, it could be easier somewhere else. But we need to realize we're part of a bigger process. I think people have to be blind not to see that there's a huge homecoming that's going on. They say the most amount of Jews that have ever lived in Israel is now. And that's a massive privilege to be part of this process. And we mustn't forget it. We need to remind ourselves. Sometimes it takes a bit of a trip out and back to appreciate and to see. I can tell you, if anyone wants to see one of my favorite pictures and sites in my workspace, is coming back home, coming back to Israel. There's something unique, there's beautiful coastlines all over the world. Most of my flying is in Europe, and the Greek islands, they're beautiful on their own. Europe has its own sites. The Alps are special. There's tons to see in the world. And I think Hashem wants us to see that. There's I can't remember, is it the Chofetz Chaim or one of the great leaders of one of the previous generations said that when we get up to Shamayim, Hashem's going to ask, did you see my Alps? Have you seen my beautiful creations? It's important to see these things. But for me, there's something unique about coming home, and proper home. Yeah, we got blessed. We managed to go back to South Africa, which was known as our home for many years. But this is home. That's the old home, and it was a place we could call home for a period of time. But the real home is here, and you see a land that you call home. Not just a house or a community, it's a land, it's something unique. So to appreciate all these things, to appreciate our existence, these moments, of our lives where we get to live through the land, we get to live through these spaces, and hopefully continue to grow. I'll finish off with one last story, which, but sad for me, it's not a flying story, but it's an amazing story anyway. I was learning for quite a while with the Rav, who lives in Bat Ain, near the Gush, or in the Gush, and he had this amazing story that through one of his own personal experiences. And it ties into what I was speaking about earlier with using stories to teach, using stories to see Hashem's hand, using stories to connect with the spirituality and the physicality and make it one. He had this experience himself, and you could see it touched him so profoundly, it comes up in most of his conversations again and again. He goes over it and he refreshes it because it's so relevant. He loves plants, and he loves this process of growing plants. It's not something foreign to our Gedolim. Rabbi wrote a book about Binyan and Zriya, about nurturing and growing, how we're supposed to treat our children. The analogy of growing a tree and growing a child often overlays, and there's